The woman who stepped off the stagecoach in Copper Falls was not the woman Cole Brennan had been expecting. The advertisement had said she was small and gentle, and accomplished in the domestic arts. The woman standing in the road with her carpet bag was tall and broad-shouldered, and looked like she could carry a full water bucket in each hand without breathing hard. She saw him staring and walked over. "You Cole Brennan?" Her voice was deeper than he expected, steady. "I am Grace Porter, your bride." Cole looked at her, then at the letter in his hand, then back at her. "There has been a mistake." "No mistake." Grace set down her bag. "You sent for a bride. I am here. Let us go." This is one of those stories that reminds you that what you think you need and what you actually need are sometimes two different things entirely. If stories like this matter to you, stories about people who see past the surface and find what's real underneath, subscribe so you never miss one. Drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Because what happened after Grace Porter arrived in Copper Falls, Montana, became the story that changed how people thought about strength and healing for the next 50 years. Cole Brennan had been scarred for 6 years when he sent for a bride. It happened in the winter of 1878 when he was 24 years old, working trap lines in the Montana wilderness. A grizzly caught him by surprise, mauled his left side from shoulder to hip, and left him for dead. He survived, barely, but the scars stayed. Long, thick welts across his ribs and back, and a deep groove along his jaw that made one side of his face pull tight when he moved. The scars were bad enough. The limp was worse. The bear had crushed his left hip, and though it healed, it never healed right. Cole walked with a hitch that made people stare. Children pointed. Women looked away. After a while, he stopped going to town. He stayed in his cabin 15 miles north of Copper Falls, and trapped alone, and told himself he did not need anyone. But loneliness has a way of eating at a man. By the spring of 1884, Cole was 30 years old and tired of talking to himself. He was tired of eating alone, tired of going weeks without hearing another voice. So he did what desperate men did. He sent for a mail-order bride. He was careful about the advertisement. Said he was a trapper with land and a cabin. Said he could provide. Said he was looking for a gentle woman who could cook and keep house. He did not mention the scars, did not mention the limp, did not mention that he had not touched another person in 6 years. 3 women responded. He picked the one whose letter sounded the softest. She wrote about needlework and baking bread and how much she loved children. She sounded delicate, manageable, safe. Grace Porter was none of those things. She was 28 years old and built like someone who had worked hard her whole life. She stood 5 feet 9 inches tall, with broad shoulders and strong arms and hands that were calloused from labor. Her face was plain and honest, with brown eyes that looked at things directly and a mouth that did not smile unless there was a reason. When Cole led her to the wagon and saw her lift her own bag without waiting for help, he knew he had made a mistake. When they rode in silence for 2 hours, and she did not complain once about the rough road or the cold or the isolation, he was certain of it. And when they finally reached his cabin, and she walked in and looked around without any of the horror or disappointment he had been expecting, he realized she was not going to be what he thought he wanted. "This is it," Cole said, standing in the doorway. "It is not much. It is enough." Grace set her bag down and started unbuttoning her coat. "Where do I sleep?" "Loft." Cole pointed up. "I sleep down here." "We are getting married tomorrow?" "Yes." "Then I will sleep down here tonight, and you sleep in the loft. After tomorrow, we share the bed proper." She hung her coat on the hook by the door. "That is how marriage works." Cole stared at her. "You want me to sleep in the loft?" "Until we are married, yes." Grace looked at him. "I am not a woman who does things out of order." "I was not suggesting." "Good, then it is settled." She looked around the cabin. "You have food?" "Some." "Show me." Cole showed her the pantry. It was not much. Dried meat, beans, flour, a few wrinkled potatoes. Grace nodded like she had expected worse. "I can work with this. You have traps to check tomorrow?" "Yes." "Then go check them. I will have food ready when you get back." She said it like it was already decided, like she was already in charge. Cole did not know what to do with that, so he just nodded and left. He checked his traps in a daze, kept thinking about Grace standing in his cabin giving orders. This was not what he wanted. He wanted someone small and quiet who would stay in the background and not ask questions. Someone who would make his life easier without making him feel things. Grace was not that. When he got back to the cabin that evening, the smell hit him before he opened the door. Bread. Fresh bread. He walked in and found the table set with 2 plates, 2 cups, and a loaf of bread so perfect it looked like it came from a bakery. There was also stew, thick and steaming, with chunks of meat and vegetables he did not know he had. Grace was stirring the pot over the fire. She looked up when he came in. "Wash up, food is ready." Cole washed his hands in the basin and sat down. Grace ladled stew into both bowls and cut thick slices of bread. She sat across from him and started eating without ceremony. No prayer, no small talk, just food. Cole took a bite of stew and stopped. It was good. Better than good. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My mother. She ran a boarding house in Ohio. I helped her from the time I was 6. Grace tore off a piece of bread. "You have good flour. The bread would be better with butter, but this will do." "I do not have butter." "I know, I looked." She ate another spoonful of stew. "You need chickens, and a cow if you can manage it. The land around here is good for grazing." "I am a trapper. I do not have time for livestock." "Then I will manage them." Grace looked at him. "That is why you sent for a wife, is it not? To help?" "I sent for a wife to cook and clean." "And I will do both, but I will also do more if you let me." She set down her spoon. "I am not a delicate woman, Mr. Brennan. I am not going to faint at blood or hard work. I am not going to sit in this cabin and wait for you to come home. I am going to make this place run better than it has ever run. That is what I do." Cole did not know what to say. So he just ate his stew and tried to figure out what he had gotten himself into. They were married the next day in the small church in Copper Falls. The preacher was an old man who asked no questions and seemed unsurprised that Cole was marrying a woman he had just met. They signed the papers. Cole paid the fee, and they rode back to the cabin as husband and wife. That night, Grace came down from the loft and climbed into bed beside him. Cole went rigid. He had not shared a bed with anyone since before the bear attack, had not been close to another person. He lay there in the dark, barely breathing, waiting for her to say something or do something or leave. Instead, she rolled over and went to sleep. The days settled into a pattern. Cole checked his traps. Grace worked the cabin and the land. She planted a garden in soil she had to break herself, turning over earth that had never been cultivated. She scrubbed floors on her hands and knees until the wood showed its grain again. She mended his clothes with small, precise stitches and organized the pantry so everything had a place. And every evening, she cooked meals that made Cole remember what it felt like to look forward to something. But she also did things Cole did not expect. She sang while she worked. Not pretty songs, work songs with rhythm and purpose. Songs that made the labor go faster. Cole would come back from checking traps and hear her voice carrying across the clearing, and something in his chest would loosen. She talked to him like he was a person instead of a broken thing, asked his opinion about where to put the garden, asked if he preferred beans or carrots, asked what he thought about the weather and the traps and whether they should get a dog. Small questions that made him feel like his thoughts mattered. And she never once commented on his appearance, never stared at the scars, never watched him limp with pity in her eyes. She just moved through the world beside him like he was exactly what he should be. One morning, he came back from the trap lines limping worse than usual. His hip always hurt when the weather changed and a storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones, that deep, grinding ache that made every step agony. He tried to hide it, but Grace noticed. She always noticed. "Sit down," she said. "I am fine." "You are limping. Sit down." Cole sat. Grace knelt in front of him and pulled off his boot. Her hands were warm and sure. She pressed her fingers along his hip, feeling for the damage. Cole tensed. No one had touched him there since the attack. No one had touched him anywhere. "This is from the bear?" Grace asked. "Yes." "The bone healed wrong." "I know." "It hurts all the time or just when the weather changes?" "Just when the weather changes. And when I walk too much." Grace nodded. She stood up and went to the stove, came back with a cloth soaked in hot water. "Put this on it. Heat helps." "I know what helps." "Then why do you not do it?" She pressed the cloth against his hip over his pants. The heat sank through the fabric and into the joint. Cole exhaled hard. "Because you think taking care of yourself is weak, or because you think you deserve to hurt." Cole looked at her. "You do not know anything about me. I know you walk around in pain when you do not have to. I know you eat standing up because sitting down and standing up hurts. I know you sleep on your right side every night because lying on your left is agony." She met his eyes. "I know because I watch. And I know you sent for a delicate bride because you thought she would not notice these things. But I am not delicate. I notice everything." She was right. Cole had wanted someone who would not see, someone who would not ask questions, someone who would let him suffer in private. "The heat helps," he said quietly. "Good. Use it." Grace stood up. "I am making a poultice tonight. Comfrey and arnica. It will help with the inflammation. You do not need to. I am your wife. Taking care of you is part of the work." She went back to the stove. "And you are going to let me, because you are tired of hurting, and I am tired of watching you hurt when I can help." That night, Grace made the poultice. She heated it over the fire and brought it to the bed where Cole was lying. "This will smell bad, but it works. I learned it from a woman in Ohio who tended miners. They got crushed bones and bad joints all the time." She pulled back his shirt and Cole went rigid again. No one had seen the scars since the doctor who stitched him up, but Grace did not flinch, did not gasp, did not look away. She just spread the poultice along his ribs and his hip with steady, careful hands. "You lived through something terrible," she said quietly. "These scars prove you were strong enough to survive. They prove I was too slow. No, they prove you fought a bear and won." She wrapped cloth around his torso to hold the poultice in place. "Most men do not walk away from a grizzly. You did. That is not weakness." Cole's throat was tight. "People stare." "Let them stare. They are not worth your time if they cannot see past scars." She finished wrapping the cloth and sat back. "You are more than what happened to you, Cole Brennan." He did not know what to say to that. So he just lay there while the poultice warmed his skin and Grace cleaned up. And when she climbed into bed beside him later, he did not go rigid. He just lay there in the dark and thought about what she had said. The weeks turned into months. Grace proved herself unbreakable in ways Cole had not expected. She worked from dawn until dark without complaint. She helped him skin animals and cure pelts and haul water and chop wood. She learned to shoot so she could hunt when he was gone. Practiced for 3 weeks until she could hit a target at 100 yards. She learned to trap so she could help with the lines, studied his sets, asked questions, and within a month was catching beaver and muskrat on her own. She did not flinch at blood or guts or hard work. She also did not flinch when things went wrong. In late winter, a wolverine got into the chicken coop and killed half the birds. Grace found the carnage in the morning and did not scream or cry. She just cleaned up the mess, reinforced the coop, and sat up 3 nights in a row with a rifle until she shot the wolverine. She skinned it herself and sold the pelt in town. When the cow got sick in early spring, Grace nursed it back to health with herbs and patience. She sat with the animal for 2 days, barely sleeping, until the fever broke and the cow could stand again. When a late frost killed half her garden, she replanted without complaint and made the harvest stretch by canning and preserving every scrap. She was unbreakable, and she made Cole feel like maybe he could be unbreakable too. But she also did small things that mattered more than the big ones. She made his favorite stew without him asking, venison with wild onions and herbs she foraged from the creek. She sat with him in the evenings and listened when he talked about his day, asking questions that showed she was really listening. She left his coffee by the fire in the morning so it would be hot when he came down from the loft. She never pushed him to talk about the attack, but when he finally did, late one night when he could not sleep and the memories were too loud, she listened to every word and did not look at him with pity, just understanding. "You carry it alone because you think no one else can bear the weight," she said. "But I can bear it. I am strong enough. And she was. In the spring, Grace bought chickens with money she saved from selling eggs in town. By summer, they had a cow. By fall, the garden was producing more vegetables than they could eat. Grace sold the surplus in Copper Falls and used the money to buy supplies. The cabin became a homestead, and Cole, who had been barely surviving before she arrived, was thriving. One day in October, Cole went to town with Grace to sell pelts and buy winter supplies. It was the first time they had gone together, and Cole was nervous. He had not been around people in months, had not subjected himself to the stares. But Grace walked beside him like she owned the street. When they entered the general store, people turned to look. Cole felt his shoulders hunch. But Grace just smiled at the shopkeeper and started listing what they needed. "That is Cole Brennan," someone whispered behind them. "With the scars. Did not know he got married." "Who would marry him?" another voice said. Grace turned around, looked at the two women standing by the fabric. "I would. I did. And I would do it again." Her voice was not loud, but it carried. "My husband is the hardest working man in this territory. He survived a bear attack that would have killed most men. He built a life out of nothing, and he is worth 10 of any man in this room." The store went quiet. Cole stared at her. Grace stared at the women until they looked away. Then she turned back to the shopkeeper. "Now, about those supplies." On the ride home, Cole was silent. Grace finally asked, "Are you angry?" "No." "Then what?" "No one has ever defended me before." Grace looked at him. "Then no one has ever deserved you before." But the real healing happened slowly. Grace put the poultice on his hip every night for 3 months. The pain lessened. The inflammation went down. Cole could walk farther without limping, could sit and stand without gritting his teeth. He started going to town again because it did not hurt to ride the wagon. Started talking to people again because he did not feel like a broken thing, and Grace never once made him feel weak for needing help. One evening in November, almost a year after she arrived, Cole was sitting by the fire whittling a piece of wood. Grace was mending a shirt. They had fallen into a comfortable silence, the kind that happens when two people are easy with each other. "Why did you answer my advertisement?" Cole asked suddenly. Grace looked up. "What?" "You said in your letter you were delicate and accomplished in domestic arts. You are neither of those things. Why did you lie?" Grace set down the shirt. "Because men do not want women like me. They want small, pretty women who will not challenge them. If I told the truth, that I am tall and strong and have opinions, no one would have chosen me. So I lied." She looked at him. "But I always planned to tell the truth after we married. I just did not expect you to be so upset about it." "I was not upset. I was confused." "You were angry." "I was scared." The admission cost him something. "I wanted someone who would not see me, who would not notice the scars or the limp or how broken I was, and you saw everything the first day." "Yes, I did." Grace's voice was soft. "And I stayed anyway." "Why?" "Because you needed someone who could see you and stay, not someone who would look away." She picked up the shirt again. "You sent for a delicate bride because you wanted to hide. But hiding was killing you. You needed someone unbreakable, someone who could handle all of you, the scars, the pain, the fear. You needed me." Cole set down the wood, looked at her across the fire. "I did not know I needed you. Most people do not know what they need until they get it." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, took her hands in his. "I am glad you lied in that letter. I am glad you are not delicate. I am glad you are exactly who you are." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Good, because I was not going to change." Cole kissed her, not because he was supposed to as her husband, but because he wanted to. Because she had taken him from barely surviving to fully alive. Because she had healed wounds he did not know could be healed. When he pulled back, Grace was smiling. "Took you long enough." "Took me long enough for what?" "To realize I was not a mistake. I was exactly what you needed." She was right. She was exactly what he needed. They lived in that cabin for the next 40 years. Grace expanded the homestead until they had chickens and cows and pigs, and a garden that fed them through every winter. Cole trapped less and farmed more, and his hip got strong enough that the limp almost disappeared. They had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and all of them learned from their mother how to work hard, and from their father how to survive anything. People in Copper Falls talked about Cole and Grace Brennan for 50 years. They talked about how she showed up tall and strong when he wanted delicate and small. They talked about how she refused to let him hide. They talked about how she healed his hip with poultices and his heart with stubbornness, and how sometimes the thing you think you want is exactly what would have destroyed you. And they talked about what Grace said when someone asked her how she knew Cole was the right man, even though he had not wanted her. Because he did not want me for the right reasons. He wanted someone weak so he could stay weak. But I am not weak. And I saw that he was not weak either, he was just scared. So I stayed and proved to him that strong people can love each other without breaking. That is not romance, that is partnership. And partnership lasts longer than romance ever could. Grace Brennan died in 1924 at the age of 68. Cole died 6 months later. They were buried on the hill behind the cabin where they had lived for 40 years. On Grace's headstone, Cole had carved the words he told her that night by the fire. She was unbreakable. She made me unbreakable too, not by fixing me, by refusing to let me stay broken.